All right, today we're looking at something pretty fascinating happening in Sri Lanka. It's all about how they're teaching English literature to sixth graders. And trust me, it's not what you'd expect. This is a brand new curriculum, and its goal isn't just to teach stories, but to actually shape who these students become. Let's dive in and see how they're doing it.
You know, when you think of literature class, you probably think of memorizing plots, maybe analyzing characters, right? Well, this curriculum flips that on its head. It asks this really powerful question. What if literature class was actually about building a better person, a better citizen? I mean, that's a pretty radical idea, and it's right at the heart of this whole thing.
So, how exactly do you do that? How do you use books for personal growth? Well, the first thing you have to get is that the mission here goes way beyond just analyzing what's on the page. This whole curriculum is designed to be a tool for real, genuine personal growth. And you can see it right here in the official aim. The language they use is super telling. I mean, look at these keywords: empower, growth, values, empathy. This is not just about getting a good grade on a test. The real goal is to fundamentally shape the person these students are growing into. And this really shows you just how broad the scope is. The whole thing is built around these 5 core concepts. It's this amazing mix, right? You've got your classic literary stuff, but it's blended with these huge ideas like creativity, ethics, and even things like national cohesion. It's a lot more than just reading poems.
Okay, so what's the big why behind all this? What's the driving force? Well, it's a very deliberate effort to get students ready for the complexities of the world we live in today. And this whole thing isn't just happening in a bubble. It's tied directly to Sri Lanka's national goals for education. Just look at some of these desired outcomes. They're aiming for students to be happy, resilient, reflective individuals. And the core belief here is that literature class can actually be a key part of making that happen. But then they zoom out, it doesn't just stop at the national level. The curriculum also pulls in principles from what's called Global Citizenship Education, or GCED. And that's all about understanding global issues, our shared humanity. The idea is to build empathy and a sense of responsibility, not just for your country, but for the entire world. All right, so that's the big picture why. Now, let's get into the what. What are these students actually learning day to day? What does this curriculum really look like in the classroom? It's all organized into this really clear 3-pillar framework, and that makes it super easy to understand all the different skills they're trying to develop.
So pillar number 1 is all about what people call the 4 C's. This is your foundation, right? We're talking about critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. The core skills you pretty much need for any job in the modern world. Then you've got this second pillar, which is all about literacy, but for the digital age. Because let's be real, it's not just about reading books anymore, is it? Students need to know how to navigate this just flood of online information, figure out what's a trustworthy source, and use technology in a responsible way. And that brings us to the third and final pillar, life skills. These are those personal qualities that are just so crucial for navigating life. Things like being flexible, showing leadership, taking initiative, and just having good social skills. This is the stuff that really helps you succeed long after you've left the classroom. But honestly, it goes even deeper than that. Because woven through all 3 of those pillars is a huge emphasis on something called social and emotional learning, or SEL. Think of this as the part that deals with a student's inner world, their emotions, how they handle relationships, and the choices they make. And SEL has its own 5 pillars, or competencies. You can almost think of it like a journey of personal development. It all starts with self-awareness, knowing yourself. Then you move to managing yourself. From there, it's about being aware of others, then building relationship skills, and it all leads to being able to make responsible decisions. It's basically a roadmap for building emotional intelligence. Okay, that's the why and the what, but here's the big question, right? How in the world do you actually teach something like empathy or creativity using a poem? Let's take a look at how all these big, ambitious ideas actually play out in the classroom. So for these 6th graders, the whole journey kicks off with a module called Into the Wild. And the idea is pretty smart. They use simple, easy-to-get poems and stories about nature as the doorway to start exploring all those bigger concepts we've been talking about. They start with the basics, the fundamentals. For instance, one of the first things they do is look at the difference between a poem and a regular story, prose. It's all about understanding the building blocks of literature first, before you can really start getting creative with them. And this is where it gets really cool, I think. They don't just stay in analysis mode, they jump right into creation. The kids learn about shape poems, where the poem itself is physically shaped like the thing it's describing. It's just such a clever and fun way to blend words and visuals.
They also get into acrostic poems. And again, this is another great hands-on activity that just gets them playing with language, messing with structure, and thinking about meaning in a really fun, accessible way. And this really is the key takeaway here. The whole curriculum is designed to shift students from just being passive readers into being active creators. They're not just reading stories, they are making stuff. They're becoming the authors, the playwrights, the poets themselves. So, when you put it all together, what do you get? What's the ultimate goal here? Let's zoom out one last time for the big picture. At the end of the day, the goal is to cultivate a learner with these three essential traits: someone who is reflective, resilient, and adaptable. They want a student who can really think about their experiences, who can bounce back when things get tough, and who can handle a world that's always changing. In a way, literature becomes the training ground for life. And that really speaks to the long-term vision. This isn't just about what happens in 6th grade. It's about instilling a whole mindset of lifelong learning. It's about planting the seed that you never, ever stop growing. And as this quote says, you're always improving to meet the demands of an ever-evolving world. This whole approach from Sri Lanka is a really powerful model, and it kind of leaves us with a big question to think about, doesn't it? Beyond just focusing on grades and test scores, how can we all help make sure that education everywhere is really designed to nurture the whole person? Their mind, sure, but also their character and their heart.